Hope you're doing well. Hope everything is connecting with the stream. Um, Thank you for joining this live stream session, All Hands on Tech. My name is David Neal. Let's try this again. Hello, friends. um, Maybe having some technical difficulties on the stream, but hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining. My name is David Neal. I am a developer advocate for Pluralsight, and my job is to help you be more awesome. That's my goal in life. So if you're in technology, if you're a software developer, you do web development, web design, graphics, illustrations, anything that may touch a computer. I don't know it all. Absolutely. I don't know that anyone can, but whatever knowledge I have, whatever skills I've developed, I want to share those with you and help you with your journey, wherever you are along the way. Thank you for joining. If you would, put a comment on the in your wherever you are. If you're on LinkedIn or Twitch or Facebook or YouTube. Can't remember all the places that I'm streaming to. Say hello. I'd love to hear from you. See where you're coming from. Hi, Samina. Hi, Hogwarts. Emo Dragon. Gabriel. Thanks for joining. We are so through these series of live streams, I am walking currently through building a real-time trivia game using some technologies like Node.js, Fastify, which is a really cool newer API web framework for Node.js, building Node.js applications. I'm using Socket.io for doing real-time communications between the client in the browser or mobile device in the future, and the server. So there can be some real-time back and forth there. Hey, Bruce, thanks for joining. And and for those of you who are jumping on the stream, this is pretty awesome that you're joining, and hopefully, maybe you're coming from one of the previous sessions and returning. I'd love to hear about any feedback that you have, any questions that you have along the way. Again, my name is David Neal. I go by Reverend Geek just about everywhere on the internet. My website, reverendgeek.com. And of course, I work at Pluralsight, the site for learning new technologies. And it's pretty awesome that I get to do this kind of thing, to share with you some skills, some knowledge that I'm learning. And thank you so much for joining. It's a raid, which is a wonderful thing here. Yeah, I think that's my coworker Jeremy has talked about raiding my channel. I don't know what that means, but that's really awesome that so many of you have come directly from whatever stuff that he was working on. And thanks for joining again. If you want to follow along with the stuff that I'm building, you can find the source code over on my GitHub repository. If you go to github.com/reverentgeek/ahot-trivia-game, and AHOT is All Hands on Tech. That is the name of our show here on our Pluralsight channel. And we are, I'm going through this series of building a trivia game with Node.js. My colleague on my team, Jeremy, is also doing some streaming on his part of the show, where he's doing some .NET, I think eventually some JavaScript and so forth. So it's pretty cool to have you here. All right. I'm going to switch over to, hopefully, yeah, there's my screen. I'll also put myself in the corner down here. Again, github.com/reverentgeek/ahot-trivia game. If you want to go grab the source code, if you want to, follow along, or just subscribe to that repository, or if you have questions outside of the stream and you want to have some place to post some suggestions or ideas or questions, you can probably just do that in the GitHub repository using a GitHub issue. That would be really cool. I'm going to turn off the caption here. All right. So in the last couple of sessions, we have added, this is part of the README for the project. If you see that on the screen, there's some tasks that I've got defined here. We've installed Fastify with Node.js, along with Socket.io and the Socket.io plugin for Fastify, so we can do that real-time communications. We've defined some of our game states, which will probably evolve over time as we refactor the application and add more features and capabilities. We start off by just making sure that we can show and hide some different blocks of HTML based on the state of the game and data that was being sent from the server to the client. And then we started to refactor the application, the Hello World version of the app, with things like Vue and Tailwind, and set those technologies up. Especially Tailwind requires like a build step so that you can compile the lightweight CSS stuff that you have in your application and create a standalone CSS file on the other side that you can deploy with your application. And we switched to using Vue on displaying like components. So there's like a couple of components right now. There's an introduction, there's like a home component where it's a home screen that people see when they first go to the game, and then there's a join screen where they can enter their name and join the game. And so that's about as far as we got. We're now going to start getting into the logic of figuring out the state of the game, having multiple players join, and then once enough players have joined, start the game with a timer. We'll say, you have 90 seconds to play the game and answer as many trivia questions as you can. And we'll maintain some of that state, and then finally, when after the game is played, we'll calculate scores. Actually, we'll be calculating scores in real time all along the way, so that the main leaderboard or the screen that the audience may see will see who, which person is in the lead, how many points they have, and then at the end there'll be a leaderboard where you can see like the top scores from that day, and then recycle everything and start the game all over again. Hi, Daniel. Thank you for joining. Hogwarts Emo Dragon asked the question, have you heard of SitePoint? The name sounds familiar. SitePoint, if it's what I'm thinking of, was a content management system created by Telerik back in the day, now Progress, but I may be completely wrong. I don't know. SitePoint may also be a learning platform that has some tutorials. I may be getting the names wrong, but if you want to tell me what SitePoint is, that'd be cool too. Could be something completely different. All right. So the structure of the Node.js project, if you're joining for the first time, is I have a public folder and a source folder. The source folder is going to contain the server side code, components, and so forth. And the public folder is got the front end code, the front end client. Now, some of this is generated. So as we continue, as the application continues to evolve, you can, we're going to add some build steps. Right now we have a build step that compiles the game CSS, which is a Tailwind file, and imports this font CSS. So the client that's in the source folder is meant to be like a place where things are built in the resulting files will get put into the public folder. So when game.css is built by Tailwind, it gets put into the public folder as game.css, which is like this huge, pretty large CSS file that has all the fonts, all the style resets, and then any custom styles we have defined down at the very end. So everything you see here, like this background Indigo 300, P3, Text 3XL, those classes are all classes that we have put into our view components, and Tailwind knows how to find that information, and the CSS it generates is as small as possible. Like it doesn't take every single CSS class known to Tailwind and put in one big file. So your CSS remains as small as possible. All right, sitepoint.com. Daryl Jones's manual, JavaScript from Novice to Ninja, is mainly how I learning JavaScript, and it's in its second edition. That's really cool. If you're learning JavaScript, man, there's so many great resources available today. Unlike when I started to get into web development many years ago, and it was quite painful with the challenges of cross-browser, the way, there were so many things that were not standard back then with how browsers behaved, how JavaScript was implemented in those browsers, how the document object model, the DOM, was implemented in those browsers. That's when jQuery came along, and it changed the landscape for building web applications. It was such a breath of fresh air, even though JavaScript still had a lot of challenges and a lot of things that could surprise you and frustrate you. jQuery helped to normalize a lot of the And I am super grateful that since jQuery, so many more awesome frameworks and ideas and standards have been put into place. And the JavaScript language itself has evolved to be better and better. And it's a really great system today. And I have no hesitation at all to tell folks that building web applications and using things like JavaScript, TypeScript, and the front end frameworks that are available, man, it's there has never been a better time to be a developer and to become a developer, to learn those skills because of all the uh, awesome systems that are available. All right. So that's a little bit about the structure of the project, the public folders, the components folder that has right now our two components, home and join. And if you want to grab the source code, the README file has in it some information like you need to have Node.js installed. You can clone or unzip the source code and run npm install to install the dependencies, and then run npm run dev to start the application. And speaking of that, if I go to the command prompt, one of the things I do pretty much every week, it's kind of like a part of my routine when I'm writing code, is to whatever project I'm currently working on, I'll use npm outdated to give me a list of what dependencies do I have that are currently out of date. And anytime I see like these minor patches, unless it's a major simver version, major up version change, I will go ahead and apply these changes because these are typically bug fixes. Maybe they're dependencies of dependencies that have been updated. They could be vulnerabilities that have been fixed. Typically, they are not breaking changes. So I'll run npm update. And a lot of times, if these are minor or patch updates, the only thing that it actually updates in the project is the package lock JSON file. So it's the package JSON remains the same because npm knows that when it installs dependencies, it's going to install the latest minor versions of those, depending on how the modules are listed in the package JSON file. So if you look in package JSON, you've got dev dependencies and production dependencies. And this little tilde symbol out here in front of the version number tells npm install 4.5.14 or any minor version up to, anything up to version 5, so to speak. And that will be okay. And there's other, this is how npm behaves by default, but you can control that behavior by changing the caret to like a tilde, and that means install the latest. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that means always give me the latest version, even if it's a major version change, version upgrade. I think that's right. I hope I'm telling you the right thing. But just be aware that there's some logic built into the dependency sections of package JSON. All right. So if I go back to here and I type in npm run dev, that's going to build my CSS file, launch the game, and I'm running on port 8080. So if I launch my browser, it doesn't look all that fancy right now. We're going to get to that. One of these days we'll add some nice graphics and colors. One thing we did do is install our own fonts. So we have a custom font. I just wanted to demonstrate how to set that up with both with Tailwind and with Fastify using the Fastify static plugin. So if you're curious about how that's done, you can go watch last week's stream or just, dig into the repository and you can see how the plugin was set up and how the fonts are registered with Tailwind. Okay. So we've got a bunch of debug information printed to the console for like every request. You can see things like it's requesting the view client. It's requesting these font files. It's serving up the home component and the join component. And if I click start new game, it's going to switch over to the join component. And I can put in my gamer tag. Let's say Reverend Geek. Click next. And eventually, and so maybe one of the things we work on today is when you click next, it's going to register you as a player on the server and display a kind of a waiting screen, waiting for other players to join the game. And we can see where we got to last week is that over WebSockets, we've received the event join game from the player Reverend Geek. And now we can start to build some of that game logic on the server. All right. One of the things I know I want to do is both on the client and the server is to set up some session state so that I know from building something similar to this and working on like the logistics of having a client, multiple clients, and a server, that things happen, connections get dropped, people have network glitches, all that kind of stuff, and similar things that may temporarily disconnect them from the game. And when they either the client reconnects or the browser gets refreshed or whatever the case may be, we want to resume where they were, where they last left off, so that they can continue to have a good experience. In some cases, they don't even know that a network issue happened while they were playing the game, right? So luckily, or smart people have worked on these kinds of problems before. So in our client.js file, I want to, when we create our socket connection, to use the local storage in the browser to save a session ID, so that when the current person returns and refreshes the page or reconnects, that same session ID is reused so they can rejoin the game or where they last left off. let's see. And in order to do that, I'm going to move this over for now. I'm going to set up some other code here in the created event. So the created method gets called. It's one of those application lifecycle, or in this case, view component lifecycle events. Created is when the component is created. It's like as soon as it's created, all the bootstrapping has taken place. We can start to do some meaningful things in this view component. And as soon as it's created, I want to see, is there an existing session ID that's been stored for this this app? So I'm going to use the local storage API, which is part of the modern browsers. And I'll use get item, and we'll just call it session ID. So local storage is scoped to the origin. They call it the terminology they use is origin. So that means whatever URL you have in the browser, that is your home, the resource homepage or whatever. Everything that gets stored in local storage is scoped to that website. So even if on another website they use the same key session ID, there's not going to be a conflict, because any local storage another website uses is going to be stored and scoped separately from your site. So all that kind of logic is already taken care of for you. So you don't have to like come up with weird long key names hoping that you don't have collisions or conflicts with other web applications that use local storage. Smart. All right. So we're going to get that session ID, and if there's a session, then we want to use that to set up our sockets. So we're also going to use this.id is session ID, and this.id is what I mean here is like we're going to have an ID field. Maybe I think ID is I think it's a string. Yeah. So session ID, whatever string that socket IO creates is a string type, not a number. So if we have a session ID, set the local ID to that session ID, and we are going to set our socket auth equal to an object that has that session ID. Then we'll connect, and then we've got an event here called state. We also want to add another event so that socket.on session. So if this is in case there's no session ID, like this is the first time that this client has connected to this server, we want to local data with that. So we receive from the server our session ID. So again, we're going to set socket.auth equal to session or session ID. This.id equals session ID, and local storage.set item session ID and the value session ID. So this is what we need on the client. So now, anytime the client is connects or reconnects, if you refresh the browser, even if you close the browser, go back again, it should remember the session ID and always use that to start or reconnect to the game server. On the server side, we also need to add some logic there. Let me just trying to find my notes. So we got our game server. And so we've got a connection event. We need to assign a session ID if there's no let's see. So server. Let's see. We got where we define our plugin. So a register socket IO plugin. We need a way to hook into when this this middleware runs, not when the connection is made, but when we register this component. And I'm not sure how this is done with Fastify, so we're going to look at this together. Fastify socket IO. Let's look at the documentation for this. I register. Let's see. Let's go to the let's look at some examples. I don't think that'll help, but we'll check it anyway. On connect. Well, let's see. In the game server, when we have there's a connection. This code uses on connect. That makes me wonder, is it the same thing? Or is this outdated? Socket.io, that's the plugin. Now I'm curious. Server.io on connect, which is also takes a socket. Connect event. So maybe they're synonymous. Um, yeah. So every time I make a change, so I'm as part of the application, I have NodeMon installed. So every time I make a change to any of the source code, the JavaScript, HTML, CSS, whatever, NodeMon is going to detect that file change and then rerun the our dev script. So it's going to rerun npm run build, npm run start. So it's going to rebuild the CSS, and later on any other build steps that we may have, and relaunch the application. So we see here that maybe they're synonymous. You could use one or the other, connect or connection. Maybe. I don't know. But I know what I want to do is look at the socket auth. See if that's even a thing. That's undefined. Oh, it's not called that. Maybe. Socket.handshake.auth. Let's see if that's a thing. It's an empty object. Okay. So I'm just going to comment out this one because I think it's a duplicate. I'm going to assume it's a duplicate right now. um, so we got our handshake. We want to say session ID equals socket dot handshake dot auth dot session ID. And if there's a session ID, we need to restore that session. So there's like, we on the server side, we also need to store some information about that player, that client, the current state of that client, where the name of that player, any other kind of data that we're tracking on player state. We'll need to store, and So we'll need to get to that point. We don't have that logic yet. Otherwise, for now, we'll just say else socket dot session ID equals, and we need to generate a random ID. The random ID will use the crypto built-in crypto library that's part of Node.js to do that. So we'll say const crypto and when we start the server, we will say random ID generator is the function crypto dot random bytes. We're going to take see random bytes. Our size is 8 bytes, and we're going to convert that to a string as a hex string. So now socket.session ID is a random ID. And on the client, we should get this this session data. Let's see. So socket connection is made. And when we make the connection, we should have, I'm going to come here and refresh this socket connection made. Refresh again. Let's see. Let's also bring up our developer tools so that we can see the console. And let's see, when we get our session from the server, let's log that. Yeah, so I'm not sure that we're actually getting the session information. Let's make sure this is getting run. Can't type. Hi, James. Nice of you to join. The session ID is undefined. Oh, this session ID. So it is generating a random ID. And it's sending that state. Let's see. Socket IO session. Maybe Fastify. Oh, well, I don't think I could have figured this out on my own if this is the way to do it. So, get from the handshake headers.cookie.session ID. Okay. Oh, I think there's another, maybe the piece that I'm actually missing is configuring the component or the module for the server when I register. Where is the? Okay, here's where we register. Fastify IO. So Fastify IO, maybe session isn't enabled by default. That's usually a setting. Like when I've used this, when I've used Fastify, say in Node.js Express, when you register that plugin, you have to specify a property on or a configuration on there to turn on sessions. So you can use it. Socket IO doc. Well, here's the joy of programming, right? You're trying to follow someone's explanation, but things change over time, and so now that URL points to nothing. Page not found. So this doc, if we look, used to point to, or points to /doc/server -API. So if we look at server -API and we look at server options, there's methods, events, methods, socket, client, engine. I'm looking at all this stuff on the right hand side here. Nothing jumps out, so I'm going to search the page for session. Socket ID, a unique identifier for the session that comes from the underlying client. The ID attribute is ephemeral, is not meant to be used in your application or only for debugging purposes because the ID is regenerated after each reconnection. Please use a regular session ID instead, either sent in a cookie or stored in the local storage and sent in the auth payload. Okay, we've done that. So how do we get that? So there's a event headers where we can set cookies. Okay, so this is all well and good. It could be that uh, the Node.js plugin that I use for like Express had all of this logic kind of built into it, so we didn't have to do this ourselves. Maybe. So it looks like we may have to use this code here to look for the cookie. Set cookie. All right. Well, let's just see what happens. I want to copy and paste that code. And this is on the game server. Parse cookie. So instead of app, we are using server. And we can use const here. Let's console log SID, which is session ID. They're instead of calling it session ID, their example has SID. Let's also say console.log socket connection, socket.id. Socket. Let's just do both in the same. Handshake.auth. App crashed. Server.parse cookie. So server.parse cookie is not valid. Server.io. Parse cookie. Maybe. Just try that before I. Nope. Doesn't like that either. So, What is app? App.listen. Fastify. Oh, they're using Fastify session. So that's a separate Fastify plugin for doing sessions like web browser sessions. So it is using cookies to do that. So that's probably where this. Maybe that's where the parse cookie comes in. Let's Fastify parse cookie. That too is a separate plugin. So also the joys of writing code, creating applications is figuring out where where these when somebody posts examples of their code, say like on Stack Overflow or uh, GitHub issues or wherever you may find it, they don't always explain, well, these are all the plugins I'm using. So it may be hard to take the code that the example that they've, you know, as the solution and plug it into your own code because you may be missing some of the other dependencies that they have that they're using. So in this case, uh, cookies and sessions. Let's see, Fastify session um, plugin. Okay. So I think that's what we're going to have to do is install this session and cookie plugins to be able to accomplish what I wanted to do with Socket.io. So let's come back here and use npm install Fastify cookie and Fastify session. Got those two installed. And in the server code, we're going to pull in those two modules, Fastify session, Fastify cookie, and now we need to register them. Um, so maybe before we register the Socket.io plugin, we've created our server. Register session cookies. But we're using is something that we do not want to put into our source code. This is one of those things where any kind of secrets that are part of a web application or any application that you're building, um, if you hard code it in here into your source code and check that into your repository, best case scenario is you get an alert from one of the security bots that's running in your that may be running in your repository to say, hey, you heads up, you've checked in something that is that no one should know the value of. It should be protected. But worst case is that there's no alert, there's no flag, and then somewhere down the road, someone grabs a hold of your source code, finds the secret, and now they have a key, a way to, uh, uh, you know, create some attacks on your application. So this secret needs to be stored as like an environment variable on your system. Uh, so the way Node.js handles things like environment variables is it automatically sets up a process.env, which is your local environment, and you can grab a key off of that to get that value. I should be doing the same kind of thing. Yeah. So down here, when I'm starting the server, I'm grabbing out of process.environment the port and the host for the web server. And so I want to do the same kind of thing. Maybe I'll just refactor and move this code up to the top. So after we use .env, which is our plugin for doing that supports our env files. So I have an env sample that is checked in to the project, and I have a .env that is my local env file. And this is where I want to store any kind of local configuration secrets, whatnot, that is part of like the deployment process, so that it's not checked in to source code. No one sees it except for me when I go to deploy this code. Right now, there's nothing secret in there, but I know from experience, I need to have this in place. So let's just call it cookie or session secret. And what I'm doing here is this is the environment variable. This is the key for, what's stored as an environment variable, but I am telling JavaScript to map that name to this variable name. So instead of using this all uppercase, underscore separated value as my my variable name, I want to use session secret as my variable name. So now down here where I'm using this string, I'm going to cut that, change it to session secret. And now in the environment sample, I'm going to say session secret and I also need to update my local environment file And I'm just going to do something really silly because I'm doing this over a stream. You can see what I'm putting in. If I were to put this application in production, I would definitely change this string. But for now, I'm just going to, put something silly here. And so now when my server is initialized, I'm setting the session with whatever secret I have in my environment file. And let's just make sure that it launches without exploding. I'm still going to get an error because I haven't changed this parse cookie. So let's see if I change that back to server.parseCookie. Okay, so I got further. It's still broken. Argument str must be a string. So that's in somewhere in my cookie info. So the cookies aren't, this is probably, I got to figure out what this ought to be. There's probably other configuration I need to make. So I've been trying to keep these streaming sessions to about an hour. I'm already out of time. I'm over an hour. I actually have a meeting that started already. If you have any questions about anything that we've covered today, I will. I hate to leave this in an incomplete state. I always try to get to a stopping point and commit that code back to the repository. But that's just not going to happen today. But I will continue to look at how to implement all of this. And if you join me next week on the next live stream, we will definitely resolve these issues and continue forward. So thank you again for joining. I hope you found this session informative. Maybe you learned something. Always try to throw in as much, commentary as I can to kind of explain, my thinking and my logic into what I'm trying to do. So if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. You can contact me on my, I'm Reverend Geek everywhere. GitHub, my website, reverendgeek.com, Instagram, Twitter, Mastodon. If you just search for Reverend Geek, you're going to find me in one way, and you'll be able to contact me. Hope to see you again on the next session of All Hands on Tech with your host, David Neal. And again, if you want to grab this source code, it is available on my GitHub repository at /reverendgeek/ahot-trivia-game. Thanks again for joining, and thank you so much for the feedback and your comments. Really appreciate that very, very much. I'll see you again on the next All Hands on Tech.